I had this epiphany like, I think I am depressed. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I should know what depression is.
Right.
And I was like, oh my God, I wonder how many people are like me, masking their sadness, their struggles with productivity. There are people who express depression differently. They're the teacher who doesn't eat lunch and just helps their students. They're the doctor who helps their patients and don't get sleep at night. The mom who's all about her kids and doesn't even like take a break. There's so many of us that just do. The entrepreneur who never wants to fail again. Many of us don't slow down and they stop feeling because they don't want to feel the pain. So then they can't feel the joy. And then they have anhedonia.
Dr. Judith Joseph is a board-certified psychiatrist and a clinical assistant professor of child and adolescent psychiatry at NYU Langone and chair of the Women in Medicine Initiative at Columbia University. She leads groundbreaking research on high-functioning depression and advocates for mental health equity through her work with Let's Talk Menopause. Dr. Judith has appeared on platforms like Good Morning America and Oprah Daily and is a masterclass mental health instructor. Her book on high-functioning depression shares her findings from both clinical and mental health advocacy research. Welcome to Toxic Free with KB, Dr. Judith Joseph. Welcome to Toxic Free with KB, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of what it means to live a toxic-free life. I'm your host, KB. I'm a toxic-free lifestyle advisor and a diehard advocate for clean living. I think this is a great question to start off with. What truly is depression?
Major depressive disorder is a clinical diagnosis. So it is a medical condition and it's quite common. In some cases, depending on where you're looking, it could be as frequent as 1 in 5 adolescents. And it's a very, very common experience and clinical condition for a lot of people. And to meet criteria for major depressive disorder, according to the Bible of Psychiatry, the DSM-5 or the Diagnostic Manual for statistical psychiatric conditions, you have to have at least a depressed mood or something called anhedonia, in addition to other symptoms like poor sleep, guilt, poor concentration, low energy, decreased or changes in appetite, decrease in, the way your body moves, either slow or moving really restless, hopelessness, and even suicidal ideation. So you have to have symptoms for at least 2 weeks or more for a major depressive episode. And the symptoms have to cause significant distress or impairment in functioning. And then on top of all that, it can't be caused by something that's like medical or a substance condition. Because when I look at someone,
like someone just got surgery or something.
They had a great one. Like when I treat athletes who've had surgery and they can't do the things they want to do and they have major depressive disorder, then I got to rule out a medical condition that could be causing it. Or, a thyroid condition, like a hypothyroidism. If that gets corrected, sometimes the major depressive disorder goes away. So you're like, oh, that wasn't a true primary major depressive disorder. Or if someone is withdrawing from a substance that they, have a dependence on, and they have symptoms of a major depressive disorder, I'm not going to say, well, this is primary major depressive disorder. This is related to that substance. So it has to be on its own a clinical psychiatric diagnosis, in addition to all those boxes that I just checked. So it's not something you can just kind of like diagnose yourself with using a quiz. You have to really sit with someone like myself who understands the differences.
You just gave a beautiful description about what depression looks and actually feels like in our body, like on its own. And you also threw out the example of in adolescence, but you could go further back, like childhood, because we grow up most of the time so pure, so innocent. And then later on in life, of course, we can have almost like a situational depression, right? I know me personally, we were just talking about the weather here and how I'm like so not used to it. I have always known, because I grew up in Kansas City, why I moved to the West Coast, because I wanted to be warm outside. But I had seasonal depression. It hits me hard, but it does go away. Like when the spring comes out in the summer, and I get to play outside. So I think those are such beautiful examples that people can oftentimes take note of. And, if they do have children, look at that. Or maybe look back at their childhood and be like, hey, what was I like? You also talked about anhedonia. What the heck is anhedonia?
Well, KB, I'm so glad that you brought up seasonal depression, because that reminded me to bring up the fact that major depressive disorder in itself has different subtypes. So some people have seasonal affective disorder because of the changes in seasons. And light impacts your brain. It impacts your circadian rhythms, your sleep, the way that your body even absorbs vitamins, right? That can prevent, like, vitamin D deficiency is closely linked to depression. So I'm glad you brought that up. And there are things like postpartum depression that are related to hormonal fluctuations. So there are many subtypes of depression, and it's important to bring that up. But with adolescents, they even express their depression differently.
How so?
A teen can look like moody and you're like, oh, they're just being a teenager. But that's irritability and the isolation, right? Like not wanting to be around people. They're not being difficult. Some teens are actually depressed, but they express their depression differently. Men may express their depression differently by self-medicating or like being angry, right? You hear about guys that have like anger issues. A lot of times that's depression that's untreated. So it looks different across people, across cultures, across ages, and depending on how you identify, it looks different. But anhedonia is something, I mentioned how you have to have either a low mood, depressed mood, or anhedonia. Anhedonia is a sneaky symptom that a lot of doctors miss, and a lot of people don't even realize they have it. So that's like I feel kind of meh, blah. I don't feel like doing anything. Like, I don't want to be around those people, or, like this food doesn't taste as good, or that music is all right. So it's like that blunted kind of effect where your emotions don't even feel as intense as they used to. And people just thought that's normal. Like that's how everyone is. No, anhedonia is literally the joy thief. It comes in and steals your joy, and you don't even know what it is because you've never heard of it.
This like reminds me when you're talking about this. Oh my gosh, what's that movie called? Inside Out?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And Joy?
Yes.
Okay, so I have 3 kids and they're stepchildren, but they're still kids and they're right. And we're watching the movie and they're like, oh my gosh, you are so Joy. Because obviously I'm from a different like bloodline than them. So I kind of run a little bit differently. I'm like, how was your day? And I always like kind of like see the sun shining and I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, you're so Joy. And then of course, Inside Out 2 came out, and not to be a spoiler for anyone that didn't see it, there's a new character called like Anxiety. I'm like, that's me too. Like, holy crap. So I love that you say that. And you were talking about like men who self-medicate themselves. I kind of want to jump into that really quickly, because I think we live in a world right now, and maybe it's coming along a little bit better, but men, and especially young men, are not shown or taught to express themselves fully. They don't feel as though it's safe to be, crying, or even just like be like, I need a hug, where like me, I'm like, hug me, So like, let's talk about the self-medicating signs that we can look out for when we're talking about young men, like young adolescent men, young tweens, young boys, and even older men. What are some signs and symptoms of self-medicating?
Well, not just men. I remember when I was younger, I'm from Trinidad originally. I'm from the Caribbean. And even in certain cultures, men and women are just not taught to talk about their feelings. It's like, well, at least you have a house, you have clothes, you have, all these things, you have an education, what is there to complain about, right? So I think it can be cross-cultural, but even worse, in boys and men, because they're taught to be strong. They're sometimes discouraged from crying. Like they're made fun of. And so they have a harder time validating emotions. And I talk in my book a lot about how important validation is, because human beings are afraid of the uncertain. If we don't know something, if we don't know our emotions, it is anxiety provoking. And being able to name the emotion is actually therapeutic in itself. It decreases the anxiety. And if you think about it, like if a man walks into a room and it's dark and something falls, they start swinging, right? But if you turn the light on, they're like, oh, it's just like something fell off the shelf, and they're relaxed. It's the same way. When men and boys don't know how they feel, they start swinging. And that's why I think a lot of young men have anger issues, because they don't know what they're dealing with and they don't feel safe. So they lash out. And when they self-medicate, they're lashing out against themselves. They're internalizing a lot of that pain. They're trying to numb it and push it down instead of validating it. So it does look like that. And my daughter loves Inside Out, but I think you should check this one out. If you haven't seen the Emoji Movie, have you seen that one?
I don't think so.
It's
no.
so good. There's
Okay.
a character called Meh. And I'm like, that's Anhedonia. So I'm like, there's actually a cartoon for this.
But Anhedonia would be like a really non-name. I love it. So let's jump a little bit more into the family patterns because I want to like get to the nitty-gritty on this. What are some unhealthy patterns that are passed down?
Generational trauma is real. And I do
Sure
a lot
is.
of work. Yes. I do a lot of work in scarcity trauma. And many people know about scarcity mindset, but I'm a trauma researcher. I do PTSD studies. So I like to think about it not as a way of thinking, but as a trauma that's unprocessed. Because within trauma, there's the cognitive symptoms, which is the thinking, right? The mindset. But there are also the physiological bodily symptoms like hypervigilance, feeling on edge, not feeling safe, and avoidance, right? So scarcity trauma is something that happens when you come from either a position of limited resources. Let's say your parents didn't have much or your grandparents didn't have much. Even if you grew up, in a relatively comfortable situation, a lot of those traumas can be passed down if they're not processed. And we see this in certain groups, right? People who came from refugee situations. Now they're safe. Now they have a home, but they still live kind of like as if they're going to run out of money or resources at any time. They'll eat all the food in their plate, even if they're not hungry, because they're like, well, we can't waste food.
Right.
And even if the doctor says like, well, you shouldn't really be overeating because you could be at risk for diabetes or cholesterol, they just can't see food wasting, or they have a hard time with clutter. So you go into these homes and you see that people are holding onto things that are literally not usable, but they don't want to get rid of it, or like hoarding canned foods that are expired, eating expired foods, things like that, not being able to throw away clutter, holding on to clothes that don't fit them anymore. And it's different than being environmentally conscious and not being wasteful. It's when it impacts your life and your ability to live without stress. That's when it's a problem. So scarcity trauma is a form of generational trauma that's passed down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The hoarding. Oh my, like images are just like passing through my head. Is that like, does that come more about like if a parent was like, oh, like what you said, like you should be so fortunate you have X, Y, and Z. Or when a parent says, eat all of your food off of your plate. And then my mom was a functional nutritionist, and she said, you never want to do that because then when they grow up, they'll go to a buffet and it'll be like the clean your plate club. So that's kind of where it stems from. I think hoarding is just a fascinating topic to me because I'm constantly like wondering. I've had many hoarding neighbors before in my life, and it's just ridiculous in my thought belief, but I know it's a big thing. What are some steps that we can all do to start rewriting our core beliefs and our thought patterns?
Ladies, let's talk about something we all use but don't always think about, our period products. Did you know that most tampons and pads on the market contain harmful chemicals, synthetic fibers, and plastics? Yeah, not exactly what we want in our bodies, am I right? That's why I am so excited to introduce to you Tampon Tribe, a brand that's changing the game with 100% organic, plastic-free, and toxin-free period care. Their tampons, pads, and liners are made with certified organic cotton, which means no chemicals, no dyes, no synthetics, just pure, safe, and sustainable protection. Plus, Tampon Tribe is completely zero waste, their packaging is compostable, and their products are biodegradable. So you're not just taking care of your health, you're also taking care of the planet. I've made the switch, and let me tell you, there is absolutely no going back. If you're ready to ditch the toxins and go organic, head to tampontribe.com and use code TOXICFREE20 for an exclusive, yes, exclusive 20% off at checkout. Guys, this is the highest discount out there, exclusive to Toxic Free with KB listeners only, so stock up and save. Your body deserves the best, so please give it a gift and go toxin free with Tampon Tribe and use code TOXICFREE20. Using a sauna is a key part of my wellness routine and healing journey as I continuously recover from mold exposure and boost my blood circulation for my Raynaud's. Detoxing and sweating is absolutely essential, and my Sunlighten infrared sauna has become an amazing game changer in my life. It helps me sweat out toxins, support my overall immune system, and most importantly, calm my central nervous system throughout my healing practice. We could all use a little more of that, could we? The gentle, low EMF infrared heat helps me relax, de-stress, and feel like myself again. If you are looking for a natural way to reduce your toxic load, boost circulation, and promote deep relaxation overall, I cannot recommend Sunlighten enough. It's been an essential part of my personal healing, and I know it can support you too. Head to toxicfree.com, go to my shop page where you'll see the Sunlighten ad, and use code TOXICFREEKB at checkout for up to $1,400 in savings on your sauna. Guys, yes, $1,400 in savings. Your body and your nervous system will absolutely thank you. Again, that code is TOXICFREEKB for up to $1,400 off. You can also find the easy to click through link in the description below. Send me your sauna pics. Guys, let's start sweating together.
Well, I talked about validation and how important it is to acknowledge emotions, not just the positive ones, but also the ones that are negative. You know, when people ask you, how are you doing? And you're like, great, I'm fine. Actually telling people how you feel. You don't want to trauma dump on people, but like, you know, I had a rough week, or I'm actually very tired. There's so much power in that, because when you self-validate, it allows others to support you and you don't gaslight yourself. The next thing you can do is vent. So expressing how you feel. A healthy way of venting that I started using recently is crying. Like, I used to be someone who was like, don't cry, keep it in. Now I'm like, if I'm upset, I cry, and I'm like, oh, I feel better.
It's so great. What a great somatic release.
Yes. Writing, journaling, expressing yourself through art. I consider social media an art form. And you know, any way that you want to express yourself. It could be through your fashion.
Yes.
It could be through your cooking. So there really isn't a right or wrong way to do that. And then tapping into your values, you know, like I used to really think that, you know, getting like a gazillion degrees, like going to Ivy League schools, that's what matters. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be on my deathbed and like, I wish I went to law school in addition to business and medical school. No, I'm going to be like, I wish I had 10 more minutes with my daughter, you know? Right. So tap into the things that are priceless and not with price tags, you know? Ooh. And it's okay to like your shoes. I like my shoes too.
Me too,
but
girl. Right?
But
I was like looking at yours like, may I borrow them? Are you a size 8.5?
And then vitals, you know, you were trained or grew up learning to value the mind-body connection, right? So getting good sleep, eating foods that are not processed, that actually nourish your body and brain, getting movement in, you know, having meaningful connections with people, not just like a tweet or a meme, but like connecting, and choosing the right people to invest in, because unhealthy, toxic relationships will drain your life force. Having a healthy relationship with technology, because a lot of doctors will bring you in and ask about your sleep and your eating, but they're not asking about your relationship with tech. And that really impacts your mental health, and that's your physical health. And then the last V is vision. So I'm guilty of it. I get a goal, accomplish it, on to the next, but really celebrate those wins today. Don't delay your happiness. So it doesn't have to be big. Like if I get my daughter to school on time, I sit, I enjoy my oat milk latte, and I'm like, yes, you did it today.
Yeah.
And it's a small win, but enjoy it, savor it, because we largely live life under the assumption that we're going to have tomorrow, but that's not the case. So enjoy your wins today and get your moments of joy today.
I love that. Enjoy your wins today. Take that like pat on the back. Oh my God, do people still pat?
I do. I'm like,
I feel like an old person when I say, right? Pat yourself on the back. You got to win. Right. But seriously, like it's so true. And I think that was a really great point. And you know, as scary as that may sound, like we don't know if we'll have tomorrow. So like we really have to enjoy the moment as it is today. In this moment, you and I sitting together, we get to do this. What a blessing this is, you know, meeting new friends, whatever it may be, even if the sun is not shining in winter in New York City. But let's jump into, I really want to jump into what you're primarily focused on right now, which is so fascinating to me. High functioning depression. What the heck? So high functioning depression is the #1 mental health condition that no one is talking about. How do you define high functioning depression?
Well, so I was given this talk in 2020, right in the midst of COVID. I was in front of my computer in my lab trying to support this like massive health system. So there were doctors, nurses, people in healthcare listening to this talk, and I was supposed to be, you know, helping them with their mental health because they're in crisis. They don't know what they're dealing with. People depend on them. People are dying. And halfway through the talk, I had this epiphany, like, I think I am depressed. And it was like, I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I should know what depression is.
Right.
But I was shocked by that. And I was like, oh my God, I wonder how many people are like me. I wonder how many people struggle with masking their sadness, their struggles with productivity. So I started to look in my lab and see whether or not other people were experiencing this. And you know how I told you about that Bible of psychiatry that you open up? Well, a lot of people had symptoms of depression, but they weren't meeting the final criteria where like you have to have decreased functioning. I found people over-functioning, overworking, over-exceeding. And also people weren't acknowledging having significant distress. So there are people who express depression differently. Instead of coping and slowing down, they add more to the list. They overwork, they overdo. And
I know a couple.
We all do. They're the teacher who, you know, like doesn't eat lunch and just helps their students. They're the doctor who helps their patients and don't get sleep at night. You know, the mom who's all about her kids and doesn't even like take a break. So there's so many of us that just do. The entrepreneur who never wants to fail again, you know, who has to show up for their team, for their employees. Many of us don't slow down. And we feel restless. We feel uncomfortable when we do slow down. It feels like we can't even take a break because we're so accustomed to working. And I think that high functioning depression is everywhere. I think it's the result of trauma that's not processed. People do, and they stop feeling because they don't want to feel the pain. So then they can't feel the joy. And then they have anhedonia.
That lack of joy. I mean, when you talk about this and when I was reading through your book and I've listened to you talk multiple times, I was almost like afraid myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is giving me anxiety because I am a victim of this. Like I deal with this. And, you know, it's almost like what you said, like we have sometimes too much to do where we lose motivation. We're like, well, I just don't want to do anything, or I procrastinate, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the opposite where it's like you want to push some sort of emotion out of feeling because you're like, well, if I just like get to work and like getting ahead of things, then like I don't have to like be in that moment and feel what's really going through my head or my mind. I find another, if I could use myself as another example, you were talking about journaling earlier. And I used to journal a lot. But sometimes I almost just look at my journal and won't even open up. It's almost like I don't want to see what's going through my head, or I'm like, I don't have anything that I feel like is worthy to share. Like, even if it's just like blah, 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 even though I know I should just start and like brain dump for like 5 minutes, you know? So I think it's like really vital in everyone. To be honest, I don't think anyone is free from high functioning depression or high functioning just anxiety these days, because I feel like we're so distracted, we're so inundated, and we're so disrupted all the time that how could we focus? And especially how could we focus on ourselves? Can you talk about how high functioning depression can exist, or should I say coexist with high functioning anxiety? Like, what's the difference between that?
So it's really interesting because with, you know, clinical depression and generalized anxiety disorder, a lot of the treatments are very similar. A lot of the medications focus on serotonin, which is a happy chemical.
We love it.
And so the treatment is the same for both. And then with the therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy can be used for both. So I often think about it as like two sides of a coin. People with depression, they have those symptoms that I described, like, poor concentration, guilt, low energy, poor sleep, appetite changes. Anxiety seems to be more somatic in nature. So a lot of the symptoms of anxiety are physical in nature. So that tension, that restlessness, the problems with stomach pain, headaches, feelings of dread, it's more along the side of like the fight or flight. But they tend to coexist. They tend to be in the same person. They tend to travel together, I say. And
one's a co-pilot and one's a pilot.
Right, exactly. They travel together. But the difference is that with depression, there tends to be anhedonia. So with generalized anxiety disorder, there's no anhedonia, which is the lack of pleasure and interest in things. And again, with depression, really aren't those physical symptoms, whereas they're heavy with anxiety. And hopelessness is tied to depression. Suicidality is one of the symptoms of major depressive disorder that isn't in the criteria for anxiety. So yes, they travel together, and sometimes it can be so confusing because sometimes being depressed leads you to worry and have anxiety. Sometimes being so anxious and tense leads you to be depressed.
Right.
So it's important that when you are exhibiting or having or experiencing symptoms of depression, that you also ask about symptoms for anxiety and vice versa.
Yeah. Thank you so much for like breaking that apart, because when you were describing that, I was like, okay, mine are all a little bit more like physical sensations. So it's like, yeah, maybe I'm just anxiety from inside out a little bit more than clinically depressed.
Right.
I think I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm like, yes, I know I feel anxiety, and I think we all do, but knowing that extreme difference, I think that's such a kicker. What I'm really fascinated about is that you conducted the first of its kind study on high functioning depression. Can you kind of share what you learned?
Well, I learned so much about how trauma impacts high functioning depression and the severity of it. And as a PTSD researcher, I'm often asking about trauma as it's classified in the DSM, which is the Bible of Psychiatry. But in that Bible of Psychiatry, trauma is like things like combat, physical assault, sexual assault, or like witnessing something or being in something life-threatening. But if you go to a DSM researcher and say, well, I lost all my money and I went bankrupt, they'll be like, well, that's painful, but that's not trauma. Or, like I was hospitalized with COVID and like, I made it, but I wasn't near death, but it was like really traumatizing for me. They'll be like, we don't really classify chronic illness as trauma, but
that's not fair.
It's
like
not
it could have been
fair.
traumatic to them.
So when I do these assessments, I'm like, oh, you don't meet criteria according to the DSM, but I believe you. I believe that this is emotionally really draining. I believe that it has shaped the way you see yourself in the world. I believe it has shaped the way that you behave in the world and that the way that you interact with others. So I would say that's trauma. And so a lot of people classify trauma as big T, little t. Big T are the ones that the DSM identifies. Little t are things like, having a really toxic boyfriend who kind of belittles you for like years and then you don't know who you are anymore. Or being in a toxic work environment where your boss, gaslights you. Or having like something like a bankruptcy where you don't know if you can survive. You don't know if you're going to be able to take care of your kids. Those are painful situations. And, scarcity trauma, like not having much and not knowing, whether or not you're going to be able to make it to the next week, right? So these are all things that I think shape the way that we see ourselves in the world, the way that we behave in the world, and our coping mechanisms. So many of us will shut down with trauma, but others will overwork. We will keep going. I call it, you are a human doing and not a human being. So you just overdo, you do, and you're just so afraid to slow down. And that's what I found with this research. I also found that there's a high level of anhedonia. And it makes sense, right? So like if you're not processing your pain, if you're dulling your pain, then how can you feel your joy? So a lot of these people with high functioning depression have unprocessed trauma and anhedonia.
That's definitely our word of the day, anhedonia. It's a word I didn't even know about. I knew what hedonism was, but anhedonia. I love it. It just rolls off your tongue.
It sounds sexier than it is.
I know. You're really anhedonian
right?
Today. Are you an anhedonian?
I'm so anhedonic today.
I'm going to totally say that to my husband tomorrow. He's like, what are you talking about? I'll be like, listen to the podcast. So what are the risk factors for high functioning depression?
Are you ready to elevate your skincare game? Meet Delavie Sciences, a revolutionary skincare brand blending cutting-edge science with natural ingredients to create products that truly deliver. With proprietary formulas like their award-winning Ionia line, Delavie Sciences harnesses the power of space-age technology and advanced research to target fine lines, wrinkles, and skin damage. I absolutely love this line so incredibly much, y'all. I use it daily and have noticed that my fine lines that were starting to form have been dramatically reduced in appearance. Yes, naturally. This is definitely a hooray moment for me. I also love that their products are dermatologically and clinically tested, as well as a toxin-free. Perfect for anyone embracing a healthier and toxic-free lifestyle. Guys, I don't approve everything, but this I definitely approve. By listening to Toxic Free with KB, you'll get exclusive access to, get this, 25% off all Delavie Science products by using code TOXICFREE, because your skin deserves science, not shortcuts. Once again, visit delaviesciences.com today and use code TOXICFREE for 25% off and experience the future of skin health. To hear more about this innovative skincare line, listen to my entire interview with one of the founders of Delavie Sciences, Dr. Kyle Landry. I think one of the hardest things to incorporate change into our lifestyles is probably our cleaning products, because a lot of people think just because that smell is coming out, that means it's clean. But truly, y'all, you've heard me talk about this time and time again, that smell could actually be a toxin. So something that I've actually incorporated in our household, and I actually send the kits to all of my friends and family members as gifts time and time again, is Branch Basics products. Guys, Branch Basics never set out to sell soap. They truly are on a mission to help people create healthy homes and experience the power of pure. I am totally on this game as well. And someone that has been highly sold is our house cleaner. She has helped toss the toxins with me, and she uses Branch Basics for all of our cleaning necessities at our house. And let me tell you, we don't always live in a clean space. We've got 3 kids, 2 dogs, I've got a husband, so we've got a lot of things to clean up. 3 of the things that have really popped into my shopping cart lately are their new formula laundry detergent. Their toxic-free candle, because baby girl loves a good bath time and sitting by the candles at night when she enjoys her good veggie bowls. And also their hand soap. But 2 of the staples that I live by in our household, and trust me when I tell you I can use this for everything, even on my pups, is their Oxygen Boost and their Liquid Gold Concentrate. So guys, I'd like to help you get started on your cleaning by giving you 15% off all starter kits. And also, guys, this applies to their hand soap and their toxic-free candle, all the things. Not only will you get your starter kit, but you can get a whole bunch of other items to stock up on. Give the gift to yourself and use my code over at Branch Basics, which is ToxicFreeKB. Guys, again, if you want 15% off, use ToxicFreeKB.
I talked about many of them: trauma, people pleasing. So,
Third child, dysfunctional upbringing, people pleaser, overcoming.
Many of us have a hard time saying no, and that could be out of, inherent low self-worth. I'm a middle child. I was the easy child, the ignored child, the one who you didn't have to worry about, but was pretty much neglected.
Yeah.
But people pleasing is a big thing. Like when you go after helping someone else, sacrificing your own joy for someone, bending over backwards, being taken advantage of over time, it is the perfect recipe for high functioning depression, because you delay happiness. You don't feel, you push it down, anhedonia, unprocessed pain. So I think when you think about these things, like a lot of women, a lot of underrepresented minorities, people who are in industries where they're supposed to be caretakers, a lot of nurses, doctors, teachers, educators, entrepreneurs, people who are not allowed to take a break, who don't have permission to slow down. So I think a lot of people, like you said, are at risk, and many people go through this. And there's that fine line, are you functioning or overfunctioning? And then, something's going to give eventually. You can't keep going on like that. So either your body breaks down and you have a medical condition, or you develop clinical depression and you stop functioning, or you self-soothe and you are engaging in things like drinking too much, or things like spending, or being on your phone. That's a new substance, right? Mm-hmm. So it will impact your life. It will slow you down eventually. But which one is it going to be? Is it going to be your physical health or your mental health?
Oh my gosh. Well, one can affect the other, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's a very scary downward spiral. And I think that's a really great question to ask yourself on a daily basis. And look at what's going on. Look at what's working. Look what's not working for you. And look why you're doing certain things. It's kind of scary, but I think that's step one too. How can you break free from the cycle of high functioning depression? What can we all start doing?
I think the 5 V's is really powerful, but before even doing the 5 V's, recognize, what is the signs of your happiness? I think many times, and even as a psychiatrist, I've been guilty of this, looking at other people's version of happiness, looking at other people's recipe for happiness and joy. That's not my science, right? So what is the science of your happiness? Understand that. And that's why I do this research in my lab. And that's why I have a happiness lab, because I want people to understand the science of your happiness. KB, there will only ever be one you, ever.
Yeah.
Only one you. And understand what makes you different. So I like to think about it in terms of the biopsychosocial model. Biology, what are your risk factors? What were your parents at risk for? Did your parents have depression? Did they have ADHD? Did they have genetic conditions? Did you have medical conditions? What are your psychological factors? What are your resiliency factors? In psychological, there's trauma. What is your attachment style? What are your strengths? And then the social bucket, what's in your environment? Do you have a toxic work environment? Are you eating healthy foods? Are you moving enough? Are you, in literally a toxic environment? We're just talking about the air quality, right? So understanding what is the science of your unique happiness. And then once you know what is adding or taking away from your joy, then you know where to put your efforts, and use the 5 V's that I mentioned, the validating, the venting, the values, the vitals, and the vision, and apply it to your life. You don't have to do it all at once. I call that high functioning AF when you try to heal quickly, but pick 1 or 2 to work on, right? So if it's going to be validating, right, because you want to focus on trauma, which is part of the biopsychosocial, acknowledge the pain that you've been through, acknowledge the fact that bad things happen to you, because bad things happen to good people all the time, right? If it's going to be, focusing on your biology, right? The biology of the biopsychosocial. Maybe it's the foods you're eating. Maybe, you have high inflammation and it's draining your life, right? Or maybe you're in toxic work environments or toxic relationships. That's a social component. So you need to, take another look at things. Maybe your values are not prioritized. You're valuing money and you're not valuing quality of life. And maybe you need to make a change in your occupation, right? So understand the science of your happiness, and then using the 5 V's based on the science of your unique happiness, I think can be a game changer. And I lay that all out in my book so that it's easy, because I know a lot of people don't have access to psychiatrists. Right. In some parts of the country, there's only one psychiatrist for every 30,000 people. So I want people to have tools that are easy to use.
That's almost ridiculous. I feel like everyone should have the ability, especially nowadays, our whole world went through this crazy pandemic, And I can only imagine how much help everyone still needs from it. Let's talk about depression, stress, and the body. We were just talking about the physical health and the mental health, which one's going to break down first. But how does that toxic stress that we were talking about impact both mental health and physical health?
If you look at Harvard Health's data, they talk about how the number one predictor of longevity are the quality of your relationships. So if you have healthy, meaningful connections with people, you live longer, you have less inflammation, you have a better immune system, better sleep, better heart health. Think about that. Like, I wish that was taught when I was a kid.
Yeah.
They taught about, like, don't smoke, don't do drugs, but no one ever said, hey, like, by the way, in addition to not doing those things, you should really be careful about who you partner with and who you hang out with.
Yeah.
Because it's literally draining your life force. So, like, it can literally drain you physically and break down your health. Like, think about times in your life when you were super stressed and you got sick, right? Like, stress will make you sick. So honor that, validate that, and do something about it. Many of us can't like completely X out people, right? Like, culturally, that's just not acceptable. We can't just like ghost people and we can't cut them out, but you can limit them.
Right.
And you can pour into relationships that are meaningful, that are valuable. Don't take the friends for granted who are good friends. Don't take it for granted that they're solid and that, I can see this person anytime. We're back to being peas and carrots again. No, maybe you need more peas and carrots in your life daily,
Right.
And get rid of those friends or limit those friends who are draining you, the jealous friends, the ones who talk behind your back, the ones who say they're going to support you, but they don't. They don't claim you because they're secretly competing or jealous of you or want to tear you down or see you fail. You know who they are. Don't gaslight yourself. Cut them out or limit them and pour into the people who are pouring into you.
Yeah. I think if we could just say like friendships, do that for friendships, create that strong, strict boundary, but then also like dating relationships too. Like if they would have taught that in school, like, hey, third graders, guess what? If you get married someday, your spouse is one of the number one single important decisions of your entire life. Like, these are things that I feel like they should be teaching in school is like I don't even know. What would you name the course? Human relationship psychiatry or whatever. We can come up with that later. But, I really think it's really important. Yes. I have my 12-year-old. He's like, man, I wish they should teach us this and this and this. I'm like, wow, these would be great courses to talk about. And he's just so brilliant. And especially like, I think he brought up like finance and stuff. I'm like, well, everyone thinks that way now too. Like, because when you become an adult, you're like, well, great. Like I need to learn how to do taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah. It's the values, right? Like the price tags. Their kids are being taught the price tags, but not the price lists, right? And so I think you're spot on. Like, we don't learn about love. We're taught don't get pregnant, don't get an STD. But we're not taught, don't partner with someone who's going to literally ruin your life. Right. And if we did that, people would be like, oh, I think so-and-so is like kind of a narcissist or a selfish individual, or, oh, they have like avoidant attachment. Maybe I shouldn't be in that relationship,
Maybe we'll never get anywhere in our communication efforts. Okay, so you are part of this series called Let's Talk Menopause. And I'm very fascinated about that because of the brain chemistry, what happens, men and women, or excuse me, women and men, I guess I should say. A lot of men don't believe that they go through menopause, but they do. But let's talk about how that might create depression.
Yeah. So Let's Talk Menopause is a nonprofit, and we advocate for changes within legislation so that things like hormone replacement therapy is covered. Things like supports in the workplace, are covered so that women or people who go through menopause can stay in the workplace, right? And so I got involved because of my research with women's mental health. I did a lot of studies and research in postpartum depression, but a lot of my patients who were like mid-40s, maybe had later pregnancies than most, were going straight into perimenopause and menopause. And even I was like, what's going on here? Like, the postpartum should have resolved by now. Like, but they were actually showing mental health symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. And so what happens is that our brains are very sensitive to fluctuations in hormones. So after you give birth, you have a decrease in progesterone, and that may impact your mood. It may impact your sleep, the way that you view yourself, and also the way that you focus. And when people go through perimenopause and menopause, they experience hormonal fluctuations that can impact them in mental health ways. So I call it the TIEs. T is thinking, I is identity, E is emotions, and S is sleep. And, if you don't know what it is, then you may go to a doctor and say, I have ADHD for the first time in my 40s. And it's like, actually, it's not. It's perimenopause, or it's the early signs of menopause. Or you may be like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm so moody. Like maybe like I'm different. Maybe I'm changing. No, it's hormonal fluctuations. Or why can't I get a good night's sleep? I used to sleep like a rock. So if we knew these things, if we knew that these symptoms can start showing in your late 30s to early 40s, we wouldn't be so hard on ourselves. We wouldn't be getting the wrong treatments, like being placed on antidepressants when it's not true depression, or taking anti-anxiety meds when it's not true generalized anxiety disorder, or taking stimulants when it's not really ADHD. So we would get the correct support. We would get, hormones if it's warranted, or cognitive behavioral therapy if it's warranted. So that's why, I really wanted to get involved with the legislation, and hopefully, things will change in the future. It's a bipartisan type of involvement. Both parties see this as important because, women's health funding was largely ignored. Women weren't actively involved in being participants in clinical research until like the early 90s. So a lot of the science is not for us, and we're hoping to change that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I can't wait to watch that like as it goes along, because I think, when you were just describing like perimenopause and stuff, I'm like, wow, I'm in my late 30s. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to actually probably contact my mom and be like, when did you get your perimenopause? Because I feel like a lot of people, or like a lot of women especially, kind of almost fear that time. So what can we do, you as a psychiatrist, what can we do now to set ourselves up for hormonal success or mental success?
I always say that your body is your most precious bank. If somebody told you to start saving for your retirement financially in your 50s, you'd be like, where did you get your financial advice from? That doesn't make sense. So why do we start saving for our bodily health and physical wealth until we're 50? It doesn't make sense. We should start early. Things that you can start doing today are weight-bearing exercises. Okay. So, like in my 20s, I was guilty of it. I was on the elliptical, I was running on the treadmill, but really we should be lifting weights, strength training, building our muscle, because as we age, our muscle density goes down. That means instead of eating the salads, yes, it's important. We still need to get our greens, but also adding protein to that. Mm-hmm. So we need more protein in our diets. So less smoothies maybe. So things like that are really important. If you're a smoker, cutting out smoking, because that is definitely tied to worsened and earlier menopause symptoms. Things like drinking excessively, limiting alcohol just has so many health benefits, including for perimenopause and menopause. And the quality of your relationships. I cannot stress this. Toxic people, you know who they are. Yeah. You got to limit your exposure to them because they will put you in early menopause. There's a close correlation between trauma and early menopause. So if you're already at risk, if you already have trauma in your background, you may want to consider that this may be a vulnerable time in life for you. So try to implement some of these things, the dietary changes, the movement changes, the exercise changes, the getting good rest, and the mental capacity. A lot of us, I'm guilty of it. I multitask. I have a lab. I create content. I have a child. I run a business. Like, I need to peel back because we can't do the things that we used to do at the same level when our body is saying slow down. Why are we forcing our bodies to do something? Maybe do less and do what we're doing better than to do many things that some of them are not even that important, right? So understand how you can support your brain and body for the least amount of stress possible.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that has to go back to the boundaries and like advocating for yourself. I know I've had to really work on that, especially since I got married and inherited 3 stepchildren that are teenagers and one's a young adult. So it's been one of those things where I've had to really advocate for myself and acknowledge when you talked about female relationships too. I think we can really help support each other and be like, hey, I see this in you, or maybe you should slow down, or maybe we can go for a walk and just be more spontaneous and be like, hey, how can I support you? Because in ancestral times or tribal communities, like the women like really like clustered up together, especially during times of like their menstrual cycle or like giving birth. I was in Molokai, Hawaii, last year, and there's this beautiful place, almost like a retreat center. And all the women would go there either when they were giving birth or when they were going through their cycles. And it'd be this like little community of women just nurturing each other. And I find that so beautiful because sometimes, I feel like we're getting better at this, but sometimes we've been used to women just tearing each other down or competing with one another. And I think me personally, I'm getting back to, yes, picking those friends that I really want to connect with, having deep conversations with, is fully expressing myself. Because I want to be an old woman, like all those like rom-com movies that you see with Diane Keaton. I swear they're all with Diane Keaton in them. You know what I'm saying? But like, they're all like them having like a book club, but they're not really reading the book. You know, I want those friendships. They're also supportive and just enlightening. I'm going to use this term, but I'm not sure if it's the correct term. Mental toxicity. That might be a bad term to use. But what are some common signs of mental toxicity that people often overlook?
When you're teetering on the brink of burnout, it could be that you are pathologically productive. So your body is saying, slow down. And you're like, no, like, what do you know, body? Like, I'm going to keep going. And in some cases, you will literally physically break down, right? The other thing is, you know, I think there's something called toxic empathy. When we make excuses for people and we know deep down, our gut tells us they know what they were doing, you know, like, but we say, oh, but this happened and they're like this because of that. And you're just like, but this person consciously was being hurtful and abusive, right? Why am I giving them empathy when they're not giving me any or giving others any, right? So things like that, I think it's about being real with yourself and having an inner dialogue with yourself. Some people don't talk to themselves. I talk to myself all the time.
I'm my own best friend, girl. Yep.
Maybe too much. I'm like, well, did she mean that? What did he mean by that? And sometimes I'm like, my sister is like, you need to just take it down a notch. It's not that serious, but really call it sometimes. And 2025 is my year to thrive. And I have very little patience for people like that. Yeah. I'm going to call it as I see it this year. Like, if you're this way, be a different way, because I'm not handling it. And maybe 26 will be my year of Zen, but right now I'm calling it like it is. I'm not with the toxic people. I'm not down with that. And, you know, I think that toxic empathy and making excuses is really harmful.
Yeah. You know, when you were saying the overly productive, when someone's on the brink of being burnt out, I have a really good example of that. So I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, and she has this song called I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, which basically describes in the lyrics, she's like, I'm overly productive to a fault. You know, I can do it with a broken heart. No one knows that I'm depressed, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, wow, because it's so true. Like sometimes, like even doing this show, like I'm like, I'm so tired. I have to wake up at 3 a.m. tomorrow and catch a 6 a.m. flight. Like, you know, like I didn't get any sleep last night because the matcha screwed me over, you know? And so I'm like, I'm her, you know?
That's
like,
high functioning AF.
Well, I hope to pick it up when I get to a bed somewhere when my flight lands. But this is just the season that I'm in right here. And trust me, I will get some self-care, some much needed self-care, doctor.
I think a lot of celebrities are like that. I mean, they talk about it openly. I'm often asked, like, you know, I'm not going to say that I treat them if I don't. And even if I did treat them, I wouldn't say it. But I say, like, you know, I haven't treated the person, but, you know, if you are going on a stage and you are, you know, like performing and you just had a tragedy and you're doing like all these tours, like, that is high functioning depression, right? And many of them will say, like, I would go on tour and I was having crippling anxiety and I was depressed and I was self-medicating, but the show must go on. High functioning depression. A lot of athletes have it. A lot of performers have it because they wear a mask of productivity, of happiness, because nobody wants to be around them if they're depressed.
And they're like,
right?
I bought this ticket. I want to see the show.
They don't want to let others down.
Yeah,
right?
they don't want to let them
They're
down.
people pleasers. It's that whole dynamic. And they stop enjoying what they're doing. They stop enjoying the performance, anhedonia, right?
Yeah.
So unprocessed trauma, unprocessed pain, overproducing, people pleasing, and then anhedonia, perfect storm.
Perfect storm. So if I saw Taylor Swift right now, which I hope to see her tomorrow because I'm going to a game, but I just want to look her in the eye and be like, you know what, you're doing your best and your best is great. Mm-hmm. That's like my little saying that my 12-year-old created, and we have it on a wall in our house because it's a good reminder. You're doing your best and your best is great. And sometimes you don't have to overproduce. But if I saw Taylor, I would be like, come on, let's just have a hug. Just lean on me. We got this, You're doing your best and your best is great.
Well, people with high functioning AF, they are just like,
get off me.
They're like, actually, I just need to do more. The more I do, the less I feel. So let me just do more.
Oh no.
And you become numb to winning. You're like, I just need to just do one thing and then I'll feel good. But the happiness, post keeps getting pushed further and further back. It's like, you get it, then you're not happy. So you go for another thing and you're not happy. And it just never ends. Yeah. It's important to be happy today.
Yeah, we need to start challenging that brainwashed lifestyle. So how can we do that?
Well, again, celebrating your wins, understand the science of your happiness, and practicing the 5 E's. Anyone could do it. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it, but it takes slowing down, which people don't want to do. Yeah,
I'm definitely slowing down this week. I've got all my habit stacks. I'm going to do my lymphatic therapy, all the things. Don't worry, I make time for it in the end. Emotional toxicity and relationships with others. Or basically, I should say who we choose to associate ourselves with, the environment that we're in. How can that really affect mental health in the end?
Whoever you're associated with can impact your life force. So, it used to be thought that, every person is an island. They have to be happy on their own. If you're not happy on your own, then you're not fulfilled. And it's just not true. Human beings need each other, or else we would be born on islands alone, right? We depend on each other. Like you said, the tribe in Hawaii, they lean on each other. And the science shows us that when the person that we're in a relationship with enters the room, our biochemistry changes. I mean, I remember when I was nursing my daughter, that oxytocin, that love hormone, there's nothing like that. When you love someone, all those chemicals come out. So it really is important to not underestimate the power of who you decide to love, who you decide to let in, because it's not as easy as oh, I'm done with you. Your biochemistry depends on them. Your happiness depends on them.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad if you can't get over someone who's toxic, because your biochemistry is dependent on them, right? Just understand that this happens and know that, the next time around, maybe you choose a little better. Maybe you pay attention to your attachment style. Maybe you learn about their attachment style beforehand, because who you attach to can literally make or break you.
Yeah. We live in such a high pressured world. And one of my 4 pillars is environments, right? So I know when I got thrown into the household that I got thrown into, I'm an introvert by nature, and I went to a very extrovert, little tribe family, and it was quite overwhelming. That environment was quite overwhelming to me. And still to this day, it is a bit. I have some tools and techniques, but in this high pressured world that we live in, I'll use myself as an example. What are some specific tools or techniques that you would recommend to really manage that stress?
Well, I love surrounding myself with things that give me a sense of purpose, and I love art. So I'll put art in my home or in my office that inspires me. I'm from the Caribbean, so things that remind me of the ocean, of the hills in Trinidad, that reminds me of where I came from, of my roots and my ancestors. Also plants, I have so many plants in my home, and I joke with my friends and my family, every February, my orchids bloom. So when they bloom, I know something good happens every February. But this year they bloomed early, in January. So I'm like, this is going to be a good year.
It is.
Because I'm cutting out the toxic people.
Right.
And I always say that, if my plants are doing well, it's because I'm doing well. Why? Because it means that I am allowing sunlight into my home. I am watering them, so I'm being more attentive, so that means that I'm taking care of the things around me because I'm taking care of myself. The other things that I'm mindful of is clutter because, I came from a background that I didn't have much, and my parents came to this country with very little. And so what they would do is hoard and hold on to things because of scarcity trauma. I don't like clutter. Like, it makes me very anxious.
Me too, girl.
And I used to hold on to things, but now I'm like, oh, I'll give it to charity or
go away.
No clutter. Because if I can't think in my living space and if it makes me anxious, I won't be able to sleep, So really surrounding yourself in an environment that gives you peace, don't underestimate that. It calms your fight or flight. You feel grounded. You feel present. And that is, again, priceless. Not the price tags. It's the pricelessness, those things in life.
Great example.
Are important.
Gosh, bless you for keeping orchids alive. They scare me. They're like little aliens that I'm like, should I water you right now? Or should I do what Google says and put like an ice cube in you right now? Or should I just like not even like mess with you? Should I talk to you? So good on you.
And it's not even the expensive. I have the expensive ones, but I have the Trader Joe's one.
Those I hear are actually the best ones.
They are good.
I don't know where they get them from, but everywhere around the world, the Trader Joe orchids, they're good. It's not brought to you by Trader Joe's, but if it was, I love it. So in conclusion, Dr. Judith, what is your everyday non-negotiable?
Oh, my family. I come from a big family. And every day I talk to my siblings. I'm fortunate because I have 3 siblings and we're on a group chat and we talk every day.
I love
it. That is just a non-negotiable for me. My family comes first.
Great. I love that. And what is one easy toxic-free habit we can all start doing today?
Listen to your gut. Your body is there to protect you. There's only one you. Only one you. There will only ever be one you. So when your body is telling you information, don't gaslight it. Listen to it. It is there to protect you.
Yeah, I love that. I'm taking that one and putting it in my pocket. I'm going to take it with me. I'm going to have like on repeat. And there's only one of me. Guys, there's only one you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where can everyone follow you, grab your book?
Thanks for having me. This is so much fun. You can find me on all the socials, Dr. Judith Joseph, and you can buy my book everywhere that books are sold.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're definitely going to like talking off camera. I love it.
Okay.
And that's a wrap. See you next time. All right, y'all. Now it's time for hot habits. Okay, my hot habit for today is, and I think it's a very important one, especially within the time that we are at in the new year, it's packing your snacks or packing your meals. I guess you would say that's like meal prepping, but especially when we're talking about like toxic-free travel, packing your snacks is so important. I'm talking pack things that are within your dietary regimen and also that that you're not going to get a travel gas on the road. So what does that look like? Well, I think you can probably make sense of this, that you can personalize it to your likings and to your dietary needs. So me personally, I like to pack some fresh fruit and fresh veggies for the road, and always a protein that works with me and my body. Remember, when you're on the road, energy is key. So, and also immunities. Let me just say that. So make sure that you are fueling yourself with everything that you need and pack those snacks. Moving on to trendy trends. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I was talking about this one with my husband and he almost laughed at me. So bear with me. The trendy trend for today and what I've been seeing so often on the streets and in the mountains and all over the place is rucking. Yeah, you're like, what the F? What is rucking? So rucking basically is wearing a weighted vest or also putting weighted things in a backpack and going for a walk, a hike. I don't know. I even see people just like strolling around the block with them, walking their dog. So the whole basis of rucking is to build the mental capacity within your legs. Some say that it burns more calories. Who knows? A lot of people are doing it right now. Me personally, I don't think I want to do it. Just thinking about rucking just kind of makes my back hurt a lot. So if you are taking up a rucking, please make sure posture is key, folks. So let me know if you're rucking, and also hit me up with some of your trendy trends that you're doing this new year or just every single day. And let's see if I'll try it out. Thanks again for tuning in as always. I appreciate y'all. Remember, you guys, you're doing your best and your best is great. See you next time.
Thanks for watching Toxic Free with KB. Please subscribe to the show, comment below, and check us out on Instagram at toxicfree.kb and TikTok at toxicfreewithkb. See you next time. This is a Kilo Bravo Media production brought to you by Rainbow Creative.